Anna Whitmore stood in Evan Miller's kitchen at 3:17 in the morning, barefoot on the cold wooden floor, one arm wrapped around her elbow while the other trembled so badly she did not realize her fingernails had dug deep into the sleeve of her sweater. The refrigerator door stood half open behind her, spilling a sickly blue light across the small kitchen, across the shards of ceramic beneath the table, across the black coffee slowly spreading over the wood like a wound refusing to clot, across the old dog named Scout curled under the chair, his eyes open but silent, watching the two of them with the weary gaze of a creature that had heard too many people wake from nightmares. The broken mug was the one Anna had given Evan 3 months earlier, blue-gray, slightly rough under the glaze, with words she had painted by hand before having it fired at a weekend pottery class. Breathe, then stand. Breathe first, then stand. It was the sentence she often said to patients at the rehabilitation center. The sentence she had once said to Evan on a night when he woke and sat on the edge of the bed like a man who had crawled out of smoke. And he had looked at her with eyes so exhausted she had wanted to set her whole life down beside him just to prove he was no longer alone. But now that mug lay in pieces on the floor, its handle snapped off like a bent finger, the word breathe cracked clean through. Outside the window, snow was falling lightly over Denver, not enough to cover the street, only enough to blur everything beyond the glass as if someone had breathed over the world. Anna's phone lay lit on the table with the message she had sent Evan the afternoon before. "Are you okay?" 10 hours without an answer. 10 hours of telling herself he needed space, that he was not Mark, that Evan's silence had a reason more painful, more beautiful, more decent than her ex-husband's cold indifference. But a beautiful reason did not make the phone less silent. A painful reason did not make her heart feel less abandoned. Evan stood at the end of the hallway, outside the refrigerator's pale spill of light, his gray t-shirt damp with sweat across the back, his hair disheveled, his eyes wide open but not truly seeing her. A few minutes earlier, he had jerked awake as if thrown out of a burning house, shoved her hand away when she touched his shoulder, knocked into the table and sent the mug crashing to the floor, then backed away as if her hand itself were fire. Anna had called his name 3 times, the first time gently, the second in fear, the third almost pleading. When he finally recognized her, his face did not soften at once. It hardened first, because shame always arrived faster than love in people who had learned to hate themselves. Anna swallowed, her throat aching. "I only wanted to help you," she said. Her voice was small, but in the cold kitchen, it sounded like something thin breaking. Evan lifted a hand to his face, breathing hard, then answered in a hoarse voice that barely sounded like him. "Don't turn me into something you need to fix." The sentence moved through Anna slowly, not like a slap, but like a blade placed exactly over an old scar and pressed down. For 1 second, she was no longer standing in Evan's kitchen. She was standing in the old kitchen with Mark, the ex-husband who used to watch her cry and sigh as if she had dirtied a perfectly clean evening. She heard Mark's voice again. "You always turn everything into an emotion. You need too much. I can't keep reassuring you forever." Anna looked at Evan, the man she loved because he was broken too, the man who had once sat beside her in a snow-covered park and said that with her he did not have to pretend to be okay, and for the first time she understood something terrifying. 2 wounded people can find each other, can recognize each other's fractures, can love with every ounce of tenderness they have left. But if they both carry a burning house inside them, love does not automatically become shelter. It only becomes a shared porch where the fire eventually spreads. Before Evan, Anna had lived a very orderly life, so orderly that other people might have called it peaceful, while she was smart enough to know that peace was sometimes only a polite name for numbness. Her apartment in Denver was on the 3rd floor of an old red brick building, with windows looking down over a tree-lined street, a refrigerator covered in color-coded work schedules, running shoes placed beside the door, a rosemary plant on the sill watered in exact amounts. Sheets changed every Sunday. Clothes hung in order from morning to evening. Anna worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center, where every day she helped people stand back up after accidents they had never chosen. A man relearning how to walk after a car crash. A young woman practicing how to lift her arm after shoulder surgery. An elderly woman trembling between 2 parallel bars, as if 3 meters were an entire continent. Anna was good at her work because she did not lie to patients with cheap optimism. She told them pain did not mean failure. She told them the body needed time to trust its own weight again. She told them standing for 1 second today was still a victory, if yesterday they could not stand at all. But in her private life, she had never managed to apply those sentences to her own heart. Her 8-year marriage to Mark had not ended with a scandal large enough for outsiders to feel properly outraged on her behalf. There was no scene of catching him cheating, no violence, no shouting that brought the neighbors over. Mark killed love with reason. He was cold in a civilized way, always able to explain why she was overreacting. When she said she was lonely, he told her he was working hard for their future. When she said she needed him to look at her more, he told her he was not the expressive type. When she cried because he forgot their anniversary, he said, "Anna, we're not 20 anymore." He never openly said she was a burden. He only made her feel that needing to be loved clearly was a form of immaturity. After the divorce, Anna was proud that she no longer cried in front of anyone. She ran, worked, ate on schedule, cared for her plants, slept alone, and answered, "I'm fine," so quickly that people believed her. But that was not healing. That was freezing. She was like a patient learning to walk who kept avoiding putting weight on the injured leg, then called her limp adaptation. Evan Miller first walked into the rehabilitation center, not as the main patient, but to bring an elderly neighbor named Walter in for therapy after hip surgery. Anna remembered that morning clearly because Denver had just come through a night of snow. The entryway floor was wet from shoes. A blood pressure machine had malfunctioned, and a new intern had nearly cried when a patient snapped from pain. Evan stood in the corner, dark coat on, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched like a man who never fully turned his back to a door. He was not handsome in the advertisement sense, but something about him made people look twice. A tired face, a firm jaw, brown hair already threaded with silver at the temples, large hands marked with old scars, eyes that kept scanning exits, windows, fire extinguishers, the spaces between therapy beds. Anna recognized that kind of person right away. A wounded body always has its own language. When a young patient panicked from pain during a knee exercise, Evan reacted before Anna did. He stepped forward, did not touch immediately, only lowered himself to the patient's eye level and said, "Look at me. You don't have to beat it right now. Just breathe with me first." His voice was low, steady, not sweet, not pitying. The patient looked at him, still breathing fast, but began to follow his rhythm. After the session, Evan left his leather gloves on a chair in the waiting area. Anna ran out to the parking lot to return them. He turned when she called, light snow dusting his shoulders. "Mr. Miller," she said, holding out the gloves. "You forgot these." He looked at the gloves, then at her. "Thank you. I'm better at checking emergency exits than checking my own things." The sentence was half a joke, but his eyes were not entirely joking. "Old job?" she asked. He nodded. "Firefighter?" Then silence. Anna did not ask more. Maybe the fact that she did not ask was what made him look at her a little longer. Many people, hearing the word firefighter, would ask about heroism, about flames, about danger. Anna only said, "Walter did well today, but he'll fake more pain next week if you keep rewarding him with waffles after every session." Evan laughed, very softly, almost surprised by the sound. Their love did not begin with lightning. It began with a woman seeing a man who always stood near the door and not forcing him to explain why. Their early encounters were short and harmless. Cafe near the rehabilitation center. A table against the wall, Evan always choosing the chair facing the door, Anna never commenting. He brought Walter to therapy and sometimes stayed for black coffee afterward. She stopped by between shifts, usually ordering mint tea or a weak Americano because she did not like coffee too strong. One day the cafe was crowded, with only one small table left, and Evan asked if she minded him sitting with her. She said no. They talked about patience, about Walter always complaining of pain while secretly walking to the grocery store on his own, about Denver winters, about Scout, the old dog who had begun pretending to be deaf whenever he was called inside. He asked why she became a physical therapist. Anna gave the answer she always gave outsiders. "I like watching people regain something they thought they'd lost." Evan stirred his coffee, though he had added no sugar. "Sounds like work for someone who believes in people." Anna smiled. "Or work for someone who needs proof that broken things can still function again." He looked at her for a moment, as if the sentence had touched something inside him. When she asked whether he missed firefighting, Evan was silent longer than courtesy allowed. "There are things the body remembers even when the mind doesn't want to," he said. "The smell of smoke, the sirens, the way people call your name when they're afraid." Anna did not push. She only nodded. "It's like that at the center, too. Some patients recover and still fear stepping down a staircase because their body remembers the fall. Evan looked into his coffee. The body is very loyal to whatever almost killed it. They sat inside that sentence, neither of them rushing to turn it into a confession. Their intimacy began with half-truths that were not forced open. Anna felt comfortable because Evan did not try to make her laugh with hollow lines. Evan felt peaceful because Anna did not look at him like a project. But that was also where the first wrong seed was planted. They mistook being left alone for being understood, mistook silence without pressure for safety. Some rooms feel warm at first because no one turns the lights up too high. But if people stay too long in the dark, they do not know where the furniture really is until they trip over it. Their love grew slowly, beautifully, almost cautiously. Evan repaired the leaning bookshelf in Anna's apartment by quietly bringing over tools one Sunday afternoon, after she had mentioned exactly once that her stack of old novels had nearly fallen on her head. Anna told him he did not need to. He answered, "I know. I'm doing it because I don't want you to die under a 19th century literary uprising." She laughed and felt her chest open a little. Anna brought soup when Evan got sick, set the container on the stove, and did not stay too long because she sensed he was not used to being cared for. He looked at the soup and said, "I'm not sure I know how to thank you the right amount," she answered. "Eating it while it's hot is enough." They walked Scout through snow-covered parks, the old dog moving slowly like a cranky old man, occasionally stopping to glare at Evan as if blaming him for the weather. They sat in the car listening to old radio when the snow was too heavy to keep driving, saying little, shoulders nearly touching. Evan slept through a full night for the first time on Anna's sofa after they watched an old movie, and he said he would only close his eyes for a minute. Anna woke at 2 in the morning and found him still asleep, one hand hanging toward the floor, his face no longer tense. She stood watching him from a distance, her heart so soft it hurt. She thought perhaps love at this age was not fireworks, not texting all night, not grand vows. Perhaps it was a man once strangled by nightmares, finally sleeping in her living room. Perhaps it was her not feeling the need to put on makeup when he came over, the way he saw her in an old sweater, hair tied carelessly, exhausted after a long shift, and still looked as though she had not made the room less beautiful. But even inside those warm scenes, the cracks were already there. Evan never spoke clearly about Jack Rivera, the closest teammate who had died in the warehouse fire 10 years earlier. He had only one photograph in his study. 2 younger men standing in front of a fire truck, arms slung around each other's shoulders, faces smudged with soot, smiling like men who did not yet know one of them would become a memory. Whenever Anna asked, "Who is Jack?" Evan said, "An old friend, nothing more." He never let Anna sleep over too many nights in a row. By the second night, he always became restless, checked the door twice, cleaned the kitchen too long, said he had an early morning even when he did not. Whenever Anna asked, "What are you thinking?" he kissed her forehead instead of answering. At first, she found the gesture tender. Later, she realized it was also a way of closing a door with his mouth. The first sign of the pattern came on an evening when Anna cooked chili at Evan's house. She bought beef, red beans, cornbread, a cheap bottle of wine because Evan did not like anything too fancy, and lit a small candle on the table even though she knew he would tease her for turning dinner into a restaurant for winter survivors. Evan texted at 5 that he was on his way home after helping Walter fix a heater. 6 o'clock, he was not there. 7 o'clock, no message. Anna called once, no answer. She watched the chili boil, then turned it off, put the cornbread into the oven, then took it out, poured wine, and did not drink. Outside, night fell quickly, the kind of winter darkness that turns windows into mirrors. She saw herself in the glass, a 37-year-old woman standing in a kitchen that was not hers, waiting for a man who had not texted, and old memory crept up like cold air under a door. Mark used to come home late too, not because of anything dramatic. He stayed at the office, stopped at the gym, had beer with coworkers. When Anna asked why he did not tell her, he said, "I didn't think you needed minute-by-minute updates." She had felt herself shrink inside those words. Tonight, she told herself Evan was different. Evan had a reason. Evan was hurt. But at 8:12, when the key turned in the door, her whole body was tight as wire. Evan walked in pale, his coat carrying the faint smell of smoke. He said he had driven past a small fire in his old district. Not his call, just fire trucks, smoke, sirens, and had to pull over for a while. "A while is 2 hours," Anna said, trying to keep her voice even. Evan looked at the chili, at the candle burned low, at the table she had set. Shame crossed his face, quickly covered by defense. "I need a shower," he said. "Evan, I need a shower." He went into the bathroom and closed the door. Water ran for nearly 40 minutes. Anna sat at the table, the food going cold, the feeling in her chest shifting from worry to anger to shame for being angry at someone who had clearly been triggered. When he came out, hair wet, his face less pale but his eyes still far away, she asked, "You couldn't send me one message?" He leaned a hand on the back of a chair. "I couldn't think. You couldn't think of me?" The sentence left her before she could soften it. Evan looked at her, wounded, as if she had accused him of doing it on purpose. "That isn't what I said, but that's what I heard. I can't be responsible for everything you hear through your past." The kitchen went cold. He knew at once he had gone too far, but Anna had already stood. "And am I supposed to be responsible for telling myself that every time you disappear, I'm not allowed to hurt because you have a prettier reason than Mark did?" Evan closed his eyes. "Don't drag me into the story with your ex-husband. I don't want to, but you keep standing exactly where he stood." They did not scream. Evan apologized for not texting. Anna apologized for mentioning Mark. They reheated the chili, ate a few bites, then stopped. But from that night on, both of them began learning the wrong lessons about each other. Anna learned that Evan's silence could drag her back into old rooms. Evan learned that Anna's need could make him feel like someone failing another alarm. Maya Brooks, Anna's best friend, did not romanticize pain. Maya was an emergency room nurse. She had seen too many people use love like gauze for wounds that needed stitches. Too many people call dependence destiny. Too many couples cling to each other outside the ER and then go home to keep bleeding each other with the same old pattern. She met Anna at a small bar after her shift, hair pinned up in a hurry, dark circles under her eyes, still alert enough to look at her friend once and ask, "Did he disappear again?" Anna stirred her soda. "He didn't disappear. He was triggered." Maya nodded. "Both things can be true." Anna was irritated immediately. "You haven't seen him that much. I've seen enough to know he isn't a bad person. I've also heard enough to know you're learning how to make yourself smaller to fit inside his silences." Anna laughed without humor. "You sound like a therapist." "Good, because you quit therapy." Anna looked out the bar window, where dirty snow had been crushed into gray streaks by passing cars. "Evan isn't Mark. I know he isn't cold. He's just wounded." Maya leaned back in her chair. "Anna, a person who disappears because he's in pain is still a person who disappears." The sentence made Anna angry because it was too true and too simple. "So you think I should leave him because he has PTSD? No, I think you should stop calling your own needs selfish just because the other person has a reason not to meet them." Anna fell silent. Maya's voice softened. "You're wounded too. Who is being careful with your wounds?" Anna felt her eyes heat and hated the feeling. "Evan is careful with me in his own way." "Is his way enough?" Anna stood too quickly, her chair scraping the floor. "I don't want to turn this into a trial." Maya did not pull her back. She only said, "I'm not judging your love. I just don't want you to sacrifice yourself and call it understanding." Anna left the bar in the cold wind, angry at Maya, angry at herself, angry that the love she thought was warm had begun needing defense against practical questions. That night Evan texted, "Scout misses you." She looked at the message, so relieved that she forgot she had just cried in the car. She drove to his house, bringing soup, bringing a smile, bringing a part of herself that had already begun learning silence so love would not become harder. Evan told her about Jack on a night with no snow, only strong wind making the windows tremble softly, and Scout asleep at the foot of the bed. He woke at 2:46, not screaming, not violently the way he would later, only sitting up suddenly, both hands braced on his knees, breathing like a man who had been running. Anna woke too, but this time she did not touch him right away. She sat up beside him, pulled the blanket around her shoulders, left enough distance between them. "You're here," she said softly, not "I'm here," because she had read somewhere that someone in panic needed to be reminded of the present. Evan gave a dry, joyless laugh. "That's the problem." She did not understand. He stared into the dark. "I'm here. Jack isn't." It was the first time he had said that name without turning away. Anna stayed silent, though her whole body wanted to ask. Evan spoke slowly, in fragments, as if pulling glass out of skin. Jack Rivera had been his best friend on the crew, the man who taught him how to make coffee at the station so it did not taste like mud, the one who sang old songs while checking equipment, the one who always called Evan Professor, because Evan read safety manuals like novels. The fire had happened in an abandoned warehouse being used illegally for storage, with unhoused people sheltering inside. The ceiling was weak, the structure wrong, the smoke thick. Evan pulled one man out, turned back, then heard Jack over the radio, Then the crash of metal, then someone calling his name. "I heard him calling," Evan said, eyes fixed on the wall. "You don't have to keep going if— no. If I stop here, I'll just let you imagine a prettier version." But he still did not tell her everything. He told her he could not get back in time, that the captain held him back because it was too dangerous, that by the time they found Jack, it was too late. Anna held him afterward, very slowly, waiting until he did not pull away. Evan let her hold him, his body rigid as wood, for several minutes before it collapsed. He cried without sound. Anna rested her chin on his shoulder, her own tears falling because she hurt for him, because she felt trusted, because she believed that if he had opened this door, they would be able to walk through anything together. But Evan had not told her that before that shift. He and Jack had argued. He had not told her he had been planning to leave the crew for a job training fire safety. And Jack had called him a man abandoning his brothers. He had not told her Jack went back into the rear section of the warehouse because he wanted to prove Evan wrong about a secondary exit they had argued over. He had not told her the last thing Evan said to Jack before the alarm sounded was, "You always need to prove you're brave." And Jack had answered, "Then watch closely." Evan told Anna only enough for her to understand the pain, not the part that made him hate himself. Anna held half a truth and thought she was holding the whole man. The outside force entered not with an explosion, but with a white envelope placed neatly inside Evan's mailbox. On the envelope was the handwriting of Tom Rivera, Jack's older brother. Evan saw the name, and his face changed as though someone had switched off the lights. Tom did not hate Evan in a simple way. He was more frightening because his pain had a real reason, and because he had learned to use politeness like rope. Tom ran the Jack Rivera Memorial Fund, an organization that supported families of fallen firefighters. In photos on the website, Tom always wore a dark coat, his hair neatly cut, his smile just sad enough, standing beside his mother, beside local politicians, beside fundraising signs with Jack's smiling face on them. He spoke of sacrifice in a low voice, spoke of truth in the language of morality, spoke of survivors as if they were people publicly indebted to the dead. The invitation asking Evan to attend Jack's 10-year memorial was not long. There was only one handwritten line at the end. "My mother wants to see you, and I think it's time some people stopped letting Jack die alone in this story." Evan read it and set it down on the table. Anna stood beside him, feeling the room's pressure shift. "Do you want to go?" she asked. Evan gave a soft, joyless laugh. "Want is the wrong word. Do you need to go? Tom will turn not going into a confession." Anna looked at the envelope. "Does he have the right to do that?" Evan did not answer right away. "The dead give the living a lot of power if the living know how to use them." The sentence chilled Anna. Tom called 2 days later. Evan did not answer. Tom left a voicemail, his voice so calm it was frightening. "Evan, I'm not calling to start a war. War is what people do when both sides are still equal. I'm calling because my mother still sets out an extra plate on Jack's birthday. You can keep hiding, but don't call it respect for our grief." Anna heard the voicemail because Evan played it on speaker and then stood there as if nailed to the floor. This was the kind of antagonist who did not have to lie completely. Tom was partly right, and that partial truth made everything more poisonous. After learning about Jack, Anna began to love like a person preparing for disaster. She read about PTSD during her lunch breaks, saved articles on flashbacks, survivor's guilt, how not to touch someone's shoulder during panic, how to use short sentences, how not to say, "calm down." She bought a soft amber nightlight for Evan's room because white light made it harder for him to sleep. She avoided movies with explosions, chose tables near exits, silenced her phone when there was news about fire. Her intention was tenderness, but gradually, care became a system. She anticipated his sadness before he named it. She asked, "Are you okay?" more often. She texted when he did not answer for 3 hours. She arranged her life around the temperature of his emotions, like someone placing buckets beneath every leak in a roof, so the house would not flood. Evan was both grateful and suffocated. When he went quiet, she tightened. When she tightened, he felt like a failure. When he stepped back, she moved forward. When she moved forward, he retreated deeper. Tom began appearing at the edge of their relationship like a figure, outside a window. He emailed Evan about the memorial, attaching old photos of Jack. He sent an old article about the fire with the headline, "One lost, one saved." Once, Tom came to Evan's house while Anna was there. The air tightened like a wire. Tom stood on the porch, not stepping inside, holding a cardboard box. "I found some of Jack's things," he said. Evan looked at the box as if it were a bomb. Tom opened it. Inside was a charcoal gray hoodie from the fire department. Jack's old one, frayed at the cuffs. The name Rivera faded across the chest. Mom thought you should have it. His voice was very soft. I'm not sure, but my mother still believes some part of Jack stayed with you. She's better than I am. Evan did not touch the hoodie. Tom looked at Anna. Your Anna? Yes. Do you know which part of the story he's told you? The question was not loud, not crude, but it was like a hook thrown between them. Evan's face hardened. Tom lifted a hand, his smile sad. I'm only asking. Anyone who loves a survivor should know whether they're loving the man or the edited report. Anna felt her face go cold. Evan shut the door after Tom left, but the hoodie lay on the table like a witness refusing to disappear. The cabin trip near the lake was Anna's attempt to rescue the feeling from the beginning, and that was why it began so beautifully. She rented a small cabin a few hours outside Denver, with a stone fireplace, a porch facing a thinly frozen lake, one pine-paneled bedroom, and enough distance from the city that there were no sirens. Evan did not want to go at first, saying Scout disliked long car rides, that snow might make the roads difficult, that he was not good at scheduled rest. Anna smiled, trying to keep it light. No one is good at resting. That's why you have to reserve it in advance. He looked at her, then agreed because he saw how much she wanted it. They drove out Saturday morning, Scout lying in the back seat, sighing like a kidnapping victim. On the road, they listened to old radio. Anna peeled a tangerine, and Evan accused her of peeling it like a surgeon, every segment too clean. They laughed. At first, the cabin softened them both. Evan built a fire, Anna unpacked food. Scout claimed the rug near the hearth as if he owned the place. In the afternoon, they walked around the lake, snow crunching underfoot, Evan holding Anna's hand inside his coat pocket. And she thought perhaps all the difficult weeks behind them were just a hard stretch, not the true shape of them. That night, they went to a small restaurant in the nearby town. Warm lights, wooden tables, the smell of grilled meat and beer. Then a group of local firefighters came in, coats still carrying the cold smell of smoke, laughter loud, one man clapping another on the shoulder, the faint crackle of a radio from somewhere. Evan froze. Anna felt the change in his hand under the table before she saw his face. She held his hand. He pulled it away. The gesture was not forceful, but to Anna it felt like being rejected in front of the whole room. Evan, she said softly, you're making people look. He answered, his eyes still on the group. No one is looking. You are. The words hurt her, but she tried to swallow it. We can go outside. I don't need to be evacuated. The word evacuated landed too sharply between them. They barely spoke through the meal. On the drive back to the cabin, snow began falling harder. Anna looked out the window, trying to wait for the tension to pass. But then she asked, are you ashamed of needing me? Evan tightened his hands on the wheel. Not now, Anna. I just want to understand. No, you want to turn it into something you can manage, because you don't say anything. I'm driving in the snow after trying not to come apart in a restaurant. I don't have a speech prepared. I don't need a speech. I need you not to act like I'm the problem. Evan snapped, exhausted and sharp. You always try to make everything about your feelings. It sounded so much like Mark that Anna felt her heart drop. That night, they slept on opposite edges of the bed, the space between them colder than the snow outside. In the dark, Evan's phone lit up once. Anna did not look closely, but she saw Tom Rivera's name on the screen. The message preview showed only part of it. Jack didn't get to take weekends away from it. Evan turned the phone face down. Anna closed her eyes, but the sentence had already entered the room with them. Mark reappeared exactly when Anna was weakest, as if life always knew how to send ghosts into the hallway when the lights were flickering. They had to meet to sign documents selling the old house still partly in both their names. A small suburban house Anna had left after the divorce, though the financial paperwork had lingered. Mark arrived at the broker's office in an expensive black coat, calm-faced, his hair now threaded with silver but still carrying that neatness of a man who had never let emotion crease his clothes. He looked at Anna and noticed the fatigue beneath her eyes. Are you okay? The question sounded polite, but it still carried that old evaluation. Anna signed the first page. I'm fine, Mark glanced at her. I heard you're seeing someone. Denver is smaller than I thought. A former firefighter? Anna stopped writing. What do you want, Mark? He leaned back in his chair, not fully pleased with himself, but confident enough to hurt. Nothing, it's just that you're still the same. The same how? Always finding a broken person so you can prove you matter. The sentence was so cruel that for 1 second Anna could not breathe. He continued, his voice as if analyzing a problem rather than cutting into the woman who had once been his wife. With me, you needed me to prove I loved you clearly enough. Now you chose someone who obviously can't give you that. so you can turn enduring it into kindness. You always love by creating a story where you're the last person who doesn't leave. Anna set the pen down. You don't have the right to speak to me like you understand me. Maybe I don't understand, but I remember, she stood. You remember the version of me you made smaller. Mark stood too, his voice gentler, which made it worse. I never meant to hurt you. That was always the part you were proudest of, wasn't it? You didn't mean to. You just did. She signed the last page and left before he could answer. But his sentence followed her all the way to Evan's house. She arrived already broken open, needing to be held, needing someone to look at her and say Mark was wrong, that she was not too much, that she was not using love to prove her worth. But Evan was having a terrible day, because Tom had just sent him a scanned section of the old report with one sentence highlighted. Rivera re-entered against verbal warning. Miller unable to re-enter due to collapse risk. Evan opened the door, saw her, and tried to smile, but could not manage it. Anna stepped inside, taking off her coat as she said, I need you tonight. Evan stood in the kitchen, eyes hollow. Lana, she heard the retreat before he even finished. I don't have anything left to give. The sentence was not cold. It was emptied out, but to Anna, it was still a door closing. I need you too, she said, voice breaking. Evan looked at her like a man facing another fire with an empty oxygen tank. I know, and I don't have anything left. This was the clearest moment of tragedy before everything collapsed. Both of them needed to be rescued from old sentences, but neither had enough hands left to pull the other up. The kitchen at 3 in the morning returned 2 nights later. Evan had a nightmare. Anna touched his shoulder. He shoved her away. The mug broke. Coffee spilled. Don't turn me into something you need to fix, he said. This time, instead of stepping back immediately, Anna placed a hand on the edge of the table to hold herself steady. I'm not trying to fix you, she said, her voice trembling but clear. I just don't know where I'm supposed to love you when you keep disappearing from yourself. Evan looked at her, eyes red, his face breaking for a second before hardening again. I never asked you to be here. The sentence was cruel not because he wanted to be cruel, but because he was trying to push her out of danger by making himself someone worth leaving. Anna gave a small, painful laugh. No, you just gave me a key, let me sleep here, let me learn the sound of your breathing at midnight, let me love Scout, let me stand in this kitchen, and then every time I say I'm hurting, you remind me you never asked. Evan covered his eyes with his hand. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. Then why do we keep doing it? The question hung between them, colder than the snow. Because they loved each other. Because loving each other did not answer how to live. Anna bent down to pick up a shard of the mug, and Evan moved toward her immediately. Don't, you'll cut yourself. I know how to pick up glass. Anna, don't, she snapped, stronger this time. Don't only step forward when there's something visible to pick up. He stopped. The sentence hurt him, and she knew it. But this time, she did not apologize immediately. They did not break up that night. They wiped up the coffee, threw away the mug, sat at opposite ends of the table until almost dawn. Evan said he would try therapy. Anna said she would go back to Dr. Helen Price, the therapist she had abandoned after the divorce. They held each other before she left, the embrace stiff, exhausted, full of frightened hope. But beneath the hope was a truth neither of them dared look at yet. Sometimes people agree to repair not because there is enough foundation left, but because they are too afraid to admit the house has tilted. Before leaving, Anna picked up a small piece of the blue mug, the part with the word "stand" still on it. She did not know why she slipped it into her coat pocket. Maybe because some broken things are kept not to be fixed, but so no one can later say they never broke. They tried the right way, and that was what made the story hurt more. If they had given up immediately, Anna could have told it as a sad but clear love story. But they went to therapy. They made appointments. They tried rules. When Evan needed silence, he would text one short sentence. I'm safe, need a few hours. When Anna felt panic rising, she would say, I'm being pulled into the past, instead of accusing him. The first week, things almost improved. Evan texted when he needed to withdraw. Anna replied, I got it, even though her hands still shook. They walked Scout. They ate dinner without candles, without expectations, just sandwiches and soup. Evan attended one individual therapy session. He said very little, but he went inside the room. Anna returned to Helen. Helen was a woman in her 50s, short silver hair, calm voice, someone who did not make Anna feel judged. In that first session back, Anna told everything too quickly, as if afraid that if she stopped, she would hear herself. Helen listened, then said, You are not wrong for wanting to stay, but if staying means turning yourself into his only support system, then you are turning love into the unpaid labor of his wound. Anna burst into tears, because for the first time someone had named exactly what she was doing without making her feel stupid. But what if I don't stay? Then you'll have to face the fear that someone you love can be in pain without it being your responsibility. That sounds cruel. No, cruel is letting someone else's pain sign a contract of ownership over your life. Meanwhile, Evan went to his second therapy session, then missed the third. He drove to the therapist's parking lot, sat in the car for 40 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white, staring at the entrance as if staring into a fire. Finally, he drove away. He texted Anna, "I couldn't go in." Anna looked at the message, forced herself to breathe, and wrote back, "Thank you for telling me." But then she went into the bathroom at the rehabilitation center, locked the door, sat on the toilet, and cried because even a correct sentence did not make fear disappear. Trying was not a miracle. Trying only made clearer the places they still could not reach. Jack Rivera's 10-year memorial was organized like a fundraising event more than a family remembrance. And that was how Tom turned grief into a stage. The community hall was covered with photos of Jack. Jack in front of a fire truck, Jack hugging his mother, Jack laughing with children during a fire safety demonstration. At the center table sat his old helmet, a pair of gloves, and the charcoal gray hoodie Tom had once brought to Evan's house, now placed inside a glass case like a relic. Under the lights, the faded name Rivera looked almost accusatory. Evan almost did not go. He stood in front of his mirror for 10 minutes unable to fasten his cuff. Anna stood behind him, not helping right away. "You don't have to go," she said, though she knew the sentence was both loving and possibly an escape route. Evan looked at himself in the mirror. "If I don't go, Tom will write that story for me. And if you go, he'll make me read it." They went together. Scout stayed home. As soon as they walked in, Anna saw Tom at the front, shaking hands, accepting hugs, his grief measured perfectly. He saw Evan, and his smile did not change, but his eyes sharpened. "Thank you for coming," Tom said. Evan answered, "Where's your mother?" "In the back room." She needed a minute. Tom turned to Anna. "You came too. Good. Witnesses should see the whole scene." Anna went cold. "I'm not your witness." Tom gave a soft laugh. "No, you're the woman who loves him. Sometimes that's harder." The event began with a few safety speeches, a few thank yous to donors. Then Tom took the stage. He spoke about Jack, about courage, about the firefighting family, about the truth that the dead cannot tell their own stories. His voice was low, slow, controlling the room like a man who knew exactly when to pause so others would feel the ache. "For 10 years, Tom said, my family has lived with the official story that Jack Rivera died because the structure collapsed, that everyone did everything they could, that the survivor was also a victim." Evan sat beside Anna, his body hard as stone. Anna saw his hand trembling under the table. Tom placed a hand on the glass case holding the hoodie. "I don't deny that, but there are truths that don't live inside reports. There are sentences spoken before the alarm goes off. There are survivors who keep silent for so long that silence begins to look like virtue." The room went quiet. Anna heard blood in her ears. Tom looked straight at Evan. "Evan Miller, would you like to tell my mother what you said to Jack before his last shift?" The air in the hall turned into a courtroom. Evan did not stand at once. He was not breathing right. Anna gripped the edge of her chair, feeling the urge both to protect him and to scream, because he had not told her enough for her to understand what Tom was doing. Tom continued without needing Evan's answer. "I'm not saying Evan killed my brother. I don't have to say that. Guilt is subtler than murder. Sometimes it's just one sentence at the wrong time. Sometimes it's leaving in your mind before your teammate dies for real." Anna stood before she knew she was going to. The whole room turned. Evan looked at her, panicked. Tom looked at her, almost satisfied that he had pulled someone else onto the stage. Anna spoke, her voice shaking at first but clear. "You're using your brother as a weapon." Tom tilted his head slightly. "How many days did you know my brother, Ms. Whitmore?" "None, but I know what it feels like when the living use the absent to win a war." Tom smiled, sad and sharp. "You love him, so you think you're telling the truth." "No," Anna said. "I love him, so I wanted very badly for you to be wrong. But you're not completely wrong. That's what makes this ugly. Evan hid things. Evan let people guess. Evan let me love one part of the story and called that enough. But you don't want the truth. You want him to keep dying once a year in front of everyone, so your family doesn't have to face the fact that Jack was also a man who chose to go back inside." A murmur moved through the room. Tom's face went pale. "Don't talk about my brother's choices. Then don't turn his death into a stage where only one other man has to answer." Evan stood then. Not strong, not heroic. He stood like a man pulled from wreckage, white-faced, eyes wet. "Tom," he said. The room fell silent. "I told Jack he always needed to prove he was brave," he said, "then watch closely." Those were the last words we said to each other before the alarm. Inside the warehouse, he went back in. I said it wasn't safe. He went anyway. I pulled one person out. When I turned back, the ceiling collapsed. I tried to go in. The captain held me back. I heard him calling. Evan's breath caught. I lived 10 years as if one sentence from me pushed him into the fire. Maybe it did, partly. Maybe it didn't. I don't know anymore. But I can't keep letting you use me as Jack's living gravestone. And I can't keep letting Anna love a man who only tells the truth when he's forced onto a stage. The last sentence hurt Anna more than anything Tom had said. Because it was true, Evan turned to her in front of the whole room. "I'm sorry. Not because of Tom. Because of you." Tom stood on the stage, one hand on the hoodie case, his face breaking in a deeply human way. For a few seconds, he was no longer the antagonist. He was only a brother who had turned pain into a tool, because if he set the tool down, he would have to hold grief with his bare hands. Jack's mother, Elena, rose from the front row, her voice trembling. "Tom, enough." Those two words made Tom lower his head. The event did not end beautifully. People whispered, some cried. Some looked at Evan as if seeing him for the first time not as a legend or a survivor, but as a shattered man. Anna left the hall before Evan, not because she had stopped loving him, because some truths, when revealed in front of a crowd, do not make love cleaner. They only show both people how much dirt had been sitting inside the silence. After the memorial night, their story could no longer return to being private. Tom sent Anna an apology email 3 days later. It was short. "I told the truth as if I was the only one allowed to hurt. That wasn't justice." Anna read it and did not reply. Mark somehow heard about the event through an acquaintance in the charity world and sent a message. "I hope you understand now that love shouldn't be an emergency room." Anna looked at the message, then deleted. She did not need Mark to be right for her life to mean something. Evan called twice. She did not answer, not because she wanted to punish him, but because she could hear her own voice in her head already wanting to ask whether he had eaten, whether he had slept, whether he had gone to therapy. And she was afraid that if he said, "I'm not okay," she would step back into the old role by reflex. She met Helen and placed the ceramic shard with the word "stand" on the table. Helen looked at it. From the mug, Anna nodded. "I keep carrying it in my pocket. Like evidence." "Evidence of what?" Anna looked at the blue-gray shard. "That I was there. That it really broke. That if I miss him too much later, I don't get to retell the story as if the mug wouldn't have fallen if I had just been gentler." Helen was silent for a moment. Some people keep broken things to punish themselves. Some keep them to remember they survived the sound of breaking. Anna cried, but not much. She was beginning to understand that her love with Evan had not failed because there was not enough love. It failed because they had used each other as answers to questions other people had left behind. Evan needed Anna to be the place where he no longer heard Jack. Anna needed Evan to be the man who did not leave the way Mark had. No one could hold that role without being crushed. Their final payoff came at Evan's house on a night of heavy late March snow, after many days apart to breathe. A prettier word for the fact that neither of them knew how to stand close anymore without bleeding. Anna came to collect a few things. A sweater, a book, a pair of gloves, the scarf she had left on a chair. She thought Evan would not be home because he had said he had therapy. But his truck was outside. In the living room, the fireplace was unlit, and the house was colder than usual. Jack's hoodie was no longer on the chair. It was folded carefully inside an open box beside the fire report, Tom's apology letter, and the key to Evan's house that he had once given Anna. On the table was another blue shard of the mug, the piece with the word "breathe." Anna looked at it. "You kept it?" Evan stood in the kitchen doorway, tired-eyed but present. "I found it under the fridge after you left." Silence. 2 pieces of the same mug, one of them holding the word "breathe," the other holding the word "stand." If this were an easier story, they could have put them together and called it healing. But they were both too tired to believe in cheap symbols. Evan spoke first. "I went into therapy today." Anna looked at him. Really? Really? "I talked for about 10 minutes, then cried so hard I couldn't keep going. But I went in." "Good. Not so you would come back." The sentence hurt her and made her grateful at the same time. They sat down, not facing each other the way they did in arguments, but angled slightly away, as if eye contact too direct might make everything collapse faster. Snow fell steadily beyond the window. Evan said, "I love you, but every time you need me, I hear Jack. Not because you're like him, not because you did anything wrong. It's just the feeling that someone needs me to pull them out, needs me to be there, needs me not to fail. And in my head, I'm standing outside the warehouse again. Anna let the tears fall but did not rush to comfort him. She said, every time you go silent, I go back to the kitchen with Mark. I become the woman standing there, trying to explain that she's lonely. While the man in front of her looks at her like she ruined the evening. I know you're not him. I know, but my body doesn't wait for me to finish analyzing before it hurts. Evan nodded, eyes red. I hate Mark for making you feel that. I hate Jack a little because you still hear him more clearly than you hear me. The sentence stunned them both. Anna covered her mouth, not because she wanted to take it back, but because the truth was too bare. Evan did not get angry. He only bowed his head, tears falling onto his hands. I do too, he said. Some days I hate him for dying and leaving me to become this. Then I hate myself for hating a dead man. The room was cold, not because there was no fire, but because they had finally stopped warming themselves with illusion. Anna looked at the key on the table, the hoodie, the report, the 2 mug pieces. We don't hurt each other because we don't love each other, she said, each word slow, as if she had to pull it from deep in her bones. We hurt each other because we keep making each other answer for the people who broke us before. Evan closed his eyes. That was the truth they had circled for months. There was no third person to blame for everything. No affair, no single lie to drag out and process. Only Mark in Evan's voice when he was exhausted. Jack and Anna's tears when she needed him. Tom in the hoodie, survivor's guilt, fear of abandonment, silence, the effort to rescue, and 2 people who had used love as shelter instead of learning how to stand in the rain on their own. The breakup did not happen in one sentence. It happened through small motions, cruel because they were ordinary. Anna removed the key to Evan's house from her key ring. The metal touched the table with a soft sound. Evan picked up her wool scarf from the chair, folded it, and handed it to her with both hands. She took it, their fingers touching, and they both stayed still longer than necessary. Scout slowly came over and rested his head on her knee, his gray head heavy and warm. Anna bent to stroke his ears and whispered, "Be good, okay?" Evan watched the scene as if something inside his chest were being pulled out. He almost said, "Don't go." She saw it in the way his lips opened, then closed. But he did not say it. For the first time, Evan did not turn his pain into a rope to pull her back into the role of rescuer. Anna almost stayed because he did not ask. Because this silence was different from all the others, because it was not hiding but releasing. She stood. "I'm not leaving because I stopped loving you." Evan nodded, tears still on his face. "I know, that makes it worse. I know." He stepped closer, slowly, asking permission with every centimeter. She did not move back. They held each other for a long time in the cold living room. Jack's hoodie in the box, the key on the table, Scout beside their feet. The embrace did not heal anything. It promised nothing. It only confirmed the loss. Anna felt the bones of Evan's shoulders beneath her hands, the scent of wood, soap, and the faint old smoke she had once loved. Evan buried his face in her hair, breathing like a man trying to memorize how someone leaves without being pulled back. When they separated, he said, "I'll keep going to therapy." She smiled through tears. "Not for me. I know. For you. I know." But they both understood that his knowing now did not give back the old nights. Anna took her bag and stepped out onto the porch. Snow blew against her face. Evan stood behind the door. She did not look back a second time, because if she did, she might walk back into the house and call the repeated pain deep love one more time. In the car, she sat for a long time before starting the engine. In the rearview mirror, Evan's house still held one light. Then the light went out. A year later, Anna was still in Denver, still working as a physical therapist, still waking early. But her life was no longer as perfectly neat as before. Her apartment had a few things out of place. A blanket thrown over the sofa, a stack of books not yet shelved. The rosemary plant by the window had died during the winter after the breakup. And instead of throwing it away immediately so the apartment would look fine, Anna left the pot of dry soil there for nearly 2 months, like evidence that some things die because they are neglected and do not need to be hidden. Then she bought a new plant at the grocery store. When she changed the soil, she placed the blue ceramic shard with the word "stand" at the bottom of the pot for drainage. Not to turn the break into a pretty lesson, only because sometimes something that can no longer be a mug can still help something else keep its roots from rot. She kept seeing Helen. She learned to say, "I need," without adding "sorry." Learned to hear a phone not ring without immediately believing she had been abandoned. Some days she did well. Some days a male patient sighed during a difficult exercise, and she heard Mark's voice in it, and had to go to the break room for water. Some snowy nights, She missed Evan so badly her stomach hurt. She did not call, not out of pride, because she knew missing someone was not an order. Evan sold the old house after summer. He took a job teaching fire safety to teenagers, not returning to the fire department, but also not living like someone who had fully left that world behind. He continued therapy, unevenly at first, then more steadily. Once, after months of silence, he sent Anna a very short message. "Scout passed this morning. He went peacefully." Anna read it at the rehabilitation center and had to stand alone in the equipment room. She replied, "I'm so sorry. He was a good old man." Evan wrote back, "He liked you more than me." She cried, then laughed a little and did not send anything more. Some doors, if opened further, stop being grief and become a return to the burned house. Tom Rivera did not become a good man after the memorial in some fairy tale way. He still ran Jack's fund, still spoke before crowds in a voice that made people listen. But in a few speeches afterward, people no longer heard him call survivors indebted. Once he sent Evan the real hoodie, not in a glass case, not as evidence, simply folded in a cardboard box with a small note. "Mom said Jack hated being put behind glass." Evan kept it in the closet, not on the living room chair anymore. Mark also disappeared from Anna's life, though his sentences did not disappear completely. The difference was that now, when Mark's voice sounded in her head, Anna no longer responded to it as if it were a judge. She only recognized it as an old voice, not absolute truth. Maya remained beside her, practical, a little blunt, loving Anna by refusing to let her romanticize pain. One evening, when Anna told her she had placed the mug shard beneath the rosemary plant, Maya looked at her for a long time and said, "That's a little poetic." Anna shrugged. "I know, but I like it. I do too." And they both laughed, not because everything had become light, but because some laughter is born from being too tired to cry through another layer. Anna and Evan met again by chance at a fire safety fundraiser near the end of winter, held in a community hall with round tables, weak coffee, cookies too sweet, and old firefighter photos hanging on the walls. Anna came with the rehabilitation center, because they had an information booth about post-injury recovery. Evan came with the safety training group. They saw each other near the registration table. There was no music, no moment where the world stopped, only a small pause between two people who had once known each other's breathing at midnight. Evan looked a little different, thinner, but with eyes less far away. Anna was different too, her hair shorter, her coat dark blue, her posture no longer so rigid like a person trying to prove she was fine. "Hi," Evan said. "Hi," she answered. They stood beside each other under unflattering fluorescent lights, amid the sounds of people talking, chairs scraping, someone testing a microphone. Evan looked at her for a long time, without making the look a burden. "You look more peaceful." Anna thought about that and did not rush to accept it. "Not exactly," she said, "but I don't mistake peace for feeling nothing anymore." Evan nodded, as though the sentence entered a place in him that understood. "I can go into the therapy room now," he said. "I don't always manage to talk, but I go in." Anna smiled sadly. "Good, I wish." He stopped. This was the point where a younger version of him might have said something that pulled her back, and an older version of Anna might have stepped straight into the gap. But Evan only breathed out, "I'm glad you're still doing your work." Anna looked at her hands. "I'm glad you're still here." That was enough. After the fundraiser, they walked out to the parking lot together because light snow had begun to fall. Their cars were parked in opposite directions. For a few seconds, they stood beneath the white sky, their breath becoming thin smoke. Evan said, "Goodbye, Anna." She answered, "Goodbye, Evan." No one said, "See you soon." No one embraced. No one tried to turn growth into a reward by making it a reunion. Anna walked toward her car. She did not look back right away. Each step in the snow sounded very small. When she got inside, she rested her hands on the steering wheel and looked through the fogged glass. Evan was still standing there for a moment. Then he turned away too. She wanted to cry, and she let herself cry. Not much, not beautifully, just enough for her body to know it did not have to freeze in order to survive. That night, Anna returned to her apartment, took off her coat, watered the new rosemary plant, then sat on the kitchen floor for a long time even though the floor was cold. There was no one to tell that she had seen Evan. There was no scene of relief, no perfect closure. She thought of Scout, of the kitchen at 3 a.m., of the broken mug, of Tom placing Jack's hoodie behind glass, of Alina saying, "Enough," of Mark and his cruel sentence, of Helen, of the patients at the center learning to stand again centimeter by centimeter. She understood, finally, that her love with Evan had not failed because they had not loved enough. It failed because they met when both of them were still too used to using someone else as proof that they could live. Evan needed Anna to be the place where he could not hear Jack. Anna needed Evan to be the man who did not leave like Mark. No one could play that role without being crushed. They had grown, yes, but that growth did not make the story less sad. It only helped them understand why they could not go back. Anna stood, washed her face, turned off the kitchen light. Outside the window, snow fell over the city, quietly covering cars, rooftops, sidewalks, the paths people would have to shovel for themselves in the morning. She went to bed alone, not like someone healed, like someone who had stopped calling coldness peace. And in the dark before sleep, she placed one hand over her chest, felt the rhythm of her heart, steady but not light, and understood that there are people we love very truly, but meet at a time when both are too broken to hold each other without causing pain. Some loves do not end in betrayal, but in a truth more brutal than betrayal. Staying can also be a way of destroying the person you love. Anna survived that. Evan did too. But survival is not the same as being restored. It only means that the next morning, each person wakes in a different place, carrying a more grown, more silent, and sadder version of themselves.